If you're looking for an affordable alternative to the Tissot PRX, Seiko just released a new watch this year that I think you need to check out. This is part of the Seiko Selection S series, which is a JDM line that's released here in Japan. And because of that, you might not have heard of this watch. It's also a quartz-powered watch, so those don't seem to get a lot of exposure. However, this is a really well-built, really cool-looking watch. And if you are buying in US dollars, the exchange rate between the yen and the dollar is still wildly in favor of the dollar, so you can get a particularly good deal on this watch. Today we're checking out the Seiko Selection S Series SBTH003. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And one of the things I often do here is browse Seiko's recent releases on their Japanese website to see if there's anything interesting, particularly to people outside of Japan that maybe you might not have seen on other channels or in other places. And I think this is one that definitely is flying under the radar. However, I was immediately grabbed by the resemblance that this watch has to the Tissot PRX. Seiko has done something interesting here where this is not an integrated bracelet watch, but it kind of looks like one. The case design and especially the way they've done the lugs and the end links really kind of makes the bracelet a more seamless connection to the watch. But at the same time, it does have standard 22mm lugs, which enables you to easily swap straps. And in fact, this one does have drilled lug holes, so it makes it very easy to swap over to different straps. I was able to get this one for the equivalent of about $120, which is pretty crazy. And again, that's largely because the exchange rate is still so much in favor of the dollar right now. So if you're interested in watches and live in America in particular, I think it really pays to be keeping track of JDM watches right now because they are very affordable in the current exchange rate. But because it is a JDM watch, if you are living outside of Japan, you're going to have to jump through a few extra hoops to do that. So look around at different sites. There's a few sites that sell JDM watches direct from Japan. One of them that I've worked with in the past is Discovery Japan Mall, and they have the black dial version of this one available on their website for a pretty good price. I'm going to leave an affiliate link to that one down below. But there are a number of other sites that sell this, so look around. You might be able to find a better deal. And particularly if you want to find the blue dial one, which is the one I'm reviewing, Discovery Japan doesn't seem to have that one listed, so you might have to look around a little bit more. It's still readily available here in Japan, so I don't think it'll be too hard to find it on some Japanese exporter. Another interesting thing about this line is that they also have a line of chronograph versions. So this looks to be basically the same watch, but a little bit larger and with a chronograph implemented in it. I was a little bit more interested in the simple three-hander, but I'll also leave links to the chronograph versions down below if you want to check those out as well. So with all that out of the way, let's jump in and take a closer look at the watch. Now I'll start with a few things that I don't particularly like about this watch, but I'm willing to overlook given the price range that Seiko is offering this watch in, and that's that it comes with a hardlex or mineral crystal and hollow end links. And this is extremely common to see in Seiko's budget watches. You'll see this even in the Seiko 5 Sports series, where these are automatic watches priced between $200 and $300. And I was able to find this Seiko SBTH003 on Amazon for around $130. So whether you agree with it or not, at that price, Seiko is never going to offer you sapphire or solid end links. And also at that price, this is obviously a quartz-powered watch, not an automatic. So I want to make sure we have appropriate expectations as we get into the rest of this review. For a brand new release from Seiko, this is an extremely affordable watch. And yet it has some very interesting design cues and some really beautiful flourishes, especially on the dial. So with that in mind, let's jump in and talk about what this watch is giving you. I would classify this watch as a sports watch, and specifically one that is kind of imitating the look of the integrated bracelet sports watches like the PRX, while not actually doing an integrated bracelet, and I kind of like that. Integrated bracelet watches have this really cool look where the bracelet appears to be seamlessly melded to the case of the watch, but they come with the downside of having extremely limited options when it comes to changing to different straps if you want to. What Seiko has done here is create a watch that kind of has the illusion of an integrated sports watch without doing an actual integrated bracelet. This watch has a 41mm case, but it has wide 22mm lugs and the lugs are very thin and come to a point. The lugs are also very short, and the round part of the case actually seems to cut into the area where the lugs usually are. So the end links have to kind of wrap around that case, and it creates a very interesting and pretty seamless connection to the case. But because Seiko went with standard 22mm lug openings, and because they even included drilled lugs, it's very easy to take that bracelet off and swap it over to any strap that you want. But because of that interesting lug opening, it doesn't always look quite right, and I'll show you it on another strap in a minute here so you can see what I mean. But moving on, let's talk about two things that I really like about this watch and I think really makes it stand out from other watches in this affordable price range. And that would be both the case and dial design. Now, Seiko has a reputation for doing amazing dials, especially on their high-end watches, but just across the board, they seem to be a step ahead of pretty much everybody else in whatever price range they operate in when it comes to dial work. I think the dial on this watch is fantastic. It's a beautiful shade of deep dark blue that has a little bit of a sunburst effect and even almost a little bit of an iridescent effect. Depending on the way the light hits it, it's going to go from a very dark, almost navy to a much brighter royal blue, often with different portions of the dial showing different shades of blue. So a really cool, beautiful effect there. And then to make things even more interesting, Seiko has introduced these vertical grooves that give it a kind of pinstripe look. So overall, really beautiful dial that I don't think quite comes across in the product shots, but when you see it in person and in video, it really looks spectacular. And this dial does have to pull a lot of weight because it's a very sparse dial. There's hardly any text at all. You just have the Seiko logo applied at 12 o'clock and then a framed date cutout at 3 o'clock, which is really well integrated into the design of the watch. And then Seiko has paired this dial up with a beautiful set of stick hands that are incredibly well finished, with a subtle bevel running down the middle, with one half of it finished in a brushed or frosted finishing and the other one in a high polish finishing, which allows the hands to have a really beautiful silver look to them and yet still remain highly visible in all lighting conditions. The brushed or frosted portions reflect the light differently than the polished surface, so some lighting conditions will favor the polished surfaces, others will favor the brushed surfaces. So regardless of what you get, you're always going to be able to see the hands really easily. And this is a trick I've seen Seiko use in some of their Presage and Prospex lines, but I don't think I've ever seen it in a watch from them in this price range. So take it as a whole, the dial is just really spectacular. All of these elements are implemented far better than you would typically see from other brands in this price range. And I think it's in this area that Seiko can start to make a case for themselves as still offering something unique in this value range. You can go direct to China and pick up a watch from AliExpress that has an automatic movement, a sapphire crystal, and a bracelet with solid end links, but it's still not going to look nearly this good. Now, another thing that Seiko is known for is their lume on watches. However, the lume on this one's not particularly impressive. They've just gone with very small little lume plots above the markers. So the markers themselves are not lumed. They're just very actually nicely finished metal applied markers. And then on the chapter ring, there's small lume plots going around. This combined with the lume on the hands does give you a brief period of pretty bright after dark legibility, but because the lume is so small, it's not going to last particularly long, and it's not going to give you anywhere near the same level of performance as a dive watch. And so even though I think this should be classified as a sports watch with its 100 meters of water resistance and its very sporty looks, the lume on this really is closer and more in line with what you would find on dress watches from Seiko. This watch also features a custom case that was designed specifically for this watch. And again, while I think Seiko is obviously drawing inspiration from popular integrated sports watch designs, this is a really well executed case. It's very thin at 10 millimeters tall and very angular as well. There are a lot of flat slab-like surfaces on this watch. And also there's a fair amount of subtle curves as well. The crown guards gently flow out from the case to meet the somewhat oversized crown. And all of the surfaces, with the exception of the top of the bezel, are completely brushed. So you're getting pretty basic finishing on the case, but that polished bezel does add a bit of pop. And even without other polished accents, the angles of the case do help to catch the light in interesting ways, making this overall a very interesting and very pleasant case to look at. So on the head of the watch, on the case and the dial, I think Seiko did an amazing job. And I wish I could say the same about the bracelet, but unfortunately, it's a pretty average Seiko bracelet. It's not horrible. It's comfortable on the wrist. It features solid links that don't tug on any of my hairs. However, it does have hollow end links, and the clasp is a lower quality stamped pressed clasp. But what I think is a little bit unfortunate is that the bracelet doesn't really look like it was designed specifically for this watch. It's kind of a generic Seiko bracelet. It would have been cool to see them do something a little bit more unique, maybe a little bit more angular, or do flat links. As it is, it looks like this bracelet could have been paired up with almost any of Seiko's other watches in their collection. But that said, I think they can kind of just barely get away with it in this case. Because the dial and the case are so well done, those are the things that really draw the eye, and you don't tend to notice the bracelet as much. And if that does bother you, you can swap it out to other straps. But with that, there are some issues as well because of this very interesting lug and case design. The main problem is that the lug holes are pushed out very far to the edge of those lugs, which means that most straps are going to give you a pretty noticeable gap between the strap and the case of the watch. This is especially true because part of the case juts out into the lug area, which means that there's even more space that a strap couldn't possibly fill in around the corners of the lug. So you might have better luck with thicker straps like this rubber waffle strap I got from Uncle Seiko, which I believe has now been rebranded to just Uncle straps. I think this blue waffle pattern really pairs well with it. And because it's on the thicker side, it kind of hides that gap a little better. Another way to hide that gap is to put it on a NATO strap like this one I got from Luff Straps. This is their Shelby strap. Any single pass strap is going to hide that gap completely. And because the watch is so thin at only 10 millimeters, it doesn't add a ton of height to the watch when you put it on a NATO strap. And sporty straps like these make a lot of sense because this watch does have 100 meters of water resistance. It is more of a sports watch than a dress watch. So let's round this review out with a few words on the performance of this watch. 100 meters of water resistance means that this watch is going to be totally fine for any water activities other than actual scuba diving. So take it to the beach, go swimming, snorkeling, water skiing, whatever you want to do, this watch will be completely fine. Even though it doesn't have a screw-down crown, you don't actually need that to get this high level of water resistance. And again, I would be totally comfortable taking this watch into the water. The watch is powered by Seiko's 6N52 quartz movement, so you're going to get great accuracy from this. They rate it for between plus or minus 15 seconds a month, and I've found that my Seiko quartz watches tend to perform really well in accuracy testing that I've done. But regardless, it's going to be far better than any automatic watch out there. And I can personally attest that the watch itself is very durable because I slipped and took a pretty good fall down a flight of stairs. And I banged this thing pretty hard when I did that. It was hit with such force that one of the spring bars was completely bent, the bracelet popped open, the watch fell off my wrist. And while that Hardlex crystal unfortunately did sustain some scratches, other than that, the watch was completely fine. I popped a new spring bar back in and everything was good. So in my opinion, this is a pretty tough watch. And all in all, it's one of the most interesting watches that I've seen come out this year in this under $200 price range. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this watch down below. Always love to hear from you guys down in the comments. And if you're interested in getting some watch themed t-shirts or hoodies, you can check out my website at justthewatch.com. I'm selling this one along with a lot of other cool designs, so make sure you go check them out. But that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.